While the world was distracted by Mars, China did something no one expected. They turned their eyes to the moon, and what they found there is being kept quiet. But why? Why would a nation invest billions in expeditions to a place we supposedly already know so well? What is on the other side of the moon that has never been revealed to the public? And why, all of a sudden, did the powers that be start racing against time, as if they knew something that the rest of the world had not yet discovered? Write in the comments. In your opinion, what might China have discovered on the moon that would make it necessary to keep it from the public eye? A resource? A signal? Or something that humanity is not yet ready to know? Because from now on, you will understand why this silence can be more disturbing than any revelation. And maybe the moon was never just a satellite. The moon seems like a normal, predictable, familiar thing. But when you look closer, scientifically speaking, it's an anomaly in the solar system. No rocky planet, not even the gas giants, has a satellite that's so absurdly large relative to its size. Earth is about 4 times larger in diameter, but the moon is a quarter of its size. For comparison's sake, that would be like Mars having a moon nearly the size of Pluto, which simply doesn't happen. This ratio is so unusual that many scientists call the moon almost a partner planet, forming a double system with Earth. But this strangeness goes beyond its dimensions. The moon's orbit is too stable. Its synchronized movement with Earth, always showing the same face, happens because of its locked rotation, something that would require a specific energy balance from its origin. Furthermore, the composition of the moon defies classical models. Moon rocks are remarkably similar to those of Earth's crust, but they have different isotopic compositions, as if the moon formed from Earth, but also from something else, which has yet to be fully identified. And even with the absence of an atmosphere and current geological activity, it continues to directly affect the planet. It controls tides, stabilizes the axis of rotation, and possibly influences more subtle climate and biological patterns than we imagine. Ignoring these anomalies would be a mistake, because the more we analyze its presence, the more we realize that the moon is not just a planetary companion, it is a central piece in the balance of our entire ecosystem. Its mere existence at this exact distance and size makes life on Earth as we know it possible. But this configuration isn't just unlikely, it raises questions about what really happened to get the moon to where it is. And perhaps understanding it in depth will force us to confront a theory that has long been dismissed as too unlikely. Because when we look at what makes up the moon and what is missing from it, we begin to realize that its origin may be linked to one of the most violent and least understood events in the history of our planet. For centuries, the far side of the moon was completely unknown territory. We could only see one side of the satellite because of a phenomenon called synchronous rotation. The moon rotates around itself at the same rate as it orbits the Earth, always keeping the same hemisphere facing us. But what was on the other side, hidden from our view, has intrigued generations of astronomers. As space technology advanced, unmanned probes began to map this far side. And that's when the real surprise came. The surface was drastically different. While the near side has large dark plains of basalt, called Lunar Maria, the far side is covered almost entirely by craters, with a thicker crust and none of the well-known volcanic formations. China was the first country to land a rover there, the Chang'e 4 mission, and the feat was historic. Upon touching down in the South Pole Aitken Basin, considered one of the largest and oldest impact craters in the solar system, the Yutu 2 rover began an unprecedented analysis of material coming directly from the lunar mantle, something that not even the United States managed to do with the Apollo missions. What Chinese scientists found defied all expectations. Samples with unexpected mineral compositions, persistent thermal anomalies, and signs of geological processes that we still can't fully explain. Instead of providing answers, the far side of the moon raised a series of new questions about the formation of the satellite and its interaction with Earth. Some elements detected in the samples were not predicted by previous models. This has led experts to consider the hypothesis that the far side preserves conditions closer to the origins of the solar system, almost like an intact cosmic fossil. But there are also strange symmetry patterns between craters that do not appear to be mere natural coincidences. What about you? Do you believe that the dark side of the moon is hiding only geological secrets, or is there something beyond what conventional science can explain? Write in the comments. What do you think China actually found on the other side of the moon? Because when we analyze the hidden surface, what strikes us most are not just the rocks, but the silence of the data that makes no sense. And perhaps it is precisely in this discomfort that lies the key to something much greater. During the Chang'e 5 mission, China achieved something only 3 countries had done before: returning lunar samples to Earth. But what those samples contained had the scientific community on high alert. Among the fragments of lunar regolith, a completely new mineral was identified. It has been provisionally named Chang'e Site H, a rare translucent crystal with unusual properties and a previously unknown composition. But the most surprising thing wasn't the shape of the mineral, it was what it contained. Helium-3. Helium-3 is an isotope of helium that is extremely rare on Earth, but abundant on the lunar surface due to continued exposure to the solar wind. If harnessed, this element could be the key to a global energy revolution. Unlike fossil fuels and even traditional nuclear fusion, helium-3 could generate clean energy with no residual radiation or toxic waste. Just 1 ton of the material could power an entire city for years, and this completely changes the equation of space exploration. The moon is no longer just an object of scientific curiosity and is becoming a possible outpost for the extraction of the most promising fuel. In history, this is no longer fiction. The discovery is real, documented, and is being studied intensively in Chinese laboratories, with the world watching in silence. But this development also raises uncomfortable questions. Who will control this resource? How will it be extracted on a large scale? And most importantly, is humanity ready to handle such vast energy power without repeating the mistakes of the past? The mineral discovered by China is more than a scientific discovery. It could be the first concrete piece of a new lunar geopolitical era, one where dominance in space is measured not just by flags planted in the ground, but by who holds the energy of tomorrow. But it wasn't just the mineral soil that caught scientists' attention. Amid the analysis, a new anomaly emerged, something that shouldn't have been there, but was. And it could be even more important than any energy resource yet found. For decades, it was believed that water on the moon only existed in extremely cold and shaded regions, such as the lunar poles. It was a consensus among scientists that any other part of the surface exposed to the sun would be dry, arid, and absolutely sterile. But this belief was shaken when recent missions identified water molecules trapped in minerals in illuminated areas, including in ancient volcanic regions. The discovery is profound. It suggests that water on the moon may not be an isolated oddity, but part of a broader and still poorly understood geological process. Rather than being frozen forever in shadow, some of this water appears to have originated in the lunar interior itself, migrating over time to the surface and clinging to crystalline structures. The idea that the moon could preserve water in places that were active in the past and are now illuminated challenges, classic models of lunar geological behavior. This completely changes the logic of space exploration. If water is not limited to the poles, but is present in other regions with access to sunlight and useful minerals. The possibility of establishing permanent lunar bases becomes much more feasible. With water, we can produce oxygen, grow food, hydrate crews, and even manufacture fuel, making the moon a realistic springboard for more distant missions such as Mars. China has already incorporated this logic into its plans. By mapping precisely where these molecules are concentrated, the country is not only studying the resource, it is planning how to use it. Proposals for lunar habitats based on helium-3 reactors and supplied by local water are already part of public discussions among Chinese scientists. This is not theory, it is strategic planning. If the moon is home to both energy and water, the concept of a lunar colony goes from science fiction to a technical project. And that is what is starting to scare other powers. The possibility that someone is, in fact, one step ahead. But that wasn't the last surprise. When studying the most recent samples, a new piece of information emerged, something related to the thermal activity of the soil and what the sensors found there. No one expected. For decades, it was believed that water on the moon only existed in extremely cold and shaded regions, such as the lunar poles. It was a consensus among scientists that any other part of the surface, exposed to the sun, would be dry, arid, and absolutely sterile. But this belief was shaken when recent missions identified water molecules trapped in minerals in illuminated areas, including in ancient volcanic regions. The discovery is profound. It suggests that water on the moon may not be an isolated oddity, but part of a broader and still poorly understood geological process. Rather than being frozen forever in shadow, some of this water appears to have originated in the lunar interior itself, migrating over time to the surface and clinging to crystalline structures. The idea that the moon could preserve water in places that were active in the past and are now illuminated challenges, classic models of lunar geological behavior. This completely changes the logic of space exploration. If water is not limited to the poles, but is present in other regions with access to sunlight and useful minerals, the possibility of establishing permanent lunar bases becomes much more feasible. With water, we can produce oxygen, grow food, hydrate crews, and even manufacture fuel, making the moon a realistic springboard for more distant missions, such as Mars. China has already incorporated this logic into its plans. By mapping precisely where these molecules are concentrated, the country is not only studying the resource, it is planning how to use it. Proposals for lunar habitats based on helium-3 reactors and supplied by local water are already part of public discussions among Chinese scientists. This is not theory. It is strategic planning, and this is where reality starts to distort. Because if all this is really happening, it means we're no longer just studying the universe, we're reconfiguring our place within it. And when a civilization figures out how to survive beyond Earth, the very idea of the future changes. That's why every like on this video means more than it seems. It's not just support, it's a sign that you value this kind of content, which raises real questions about the direction of humanity. Leave your like because it helps keep this debate alive, relevant, and being shown to those who also need to think about what we're about to face. But that wasn't the last surprise. When studying the most recent samples, a new piece of information emerged. Something related to the thermal activity of the soil, and what the sensors found there no one expected. While most nations view the moon as a research field, China already sees it as strategic territory. And unlike initiatives focused solely on specific experiments, the Chinese missions reveal a pattern. They are systematically mapping the most promising points on the satellite. This is not random exploration. This is tactical cartography. Since the Chang'e 3 mission, each probe and rover has collected precise data on mineral composition, regolith depth, presence of volcanic pyroclasts and thermal anomalies. With this, Chinese scientists have been building a veritable underground database of the moon, identifying zones with the highest concentration of helium-3, areas with traces of water, and geologically stable regions for future permanent installations. This mapping is not just scientific, it is preparatory. The images obtained by the orbiters show more than craters and reliefs. They reveal viable accesses to natural caves formed by ancient lava tubes, which can serve as natural shelters against radiation. They also reveal where sunlight hits for the longest hours, essential for powering solar panels. Everything is being recorded with almost military precision. The data is being combined with advanced colonization simulations, including 3D printing of local regolith, in situ, oxygen production, and pressurized environments with indoor cultivation. These are not theories in scientific journals. They are pilot projects at universities and technology centers in China. There is something quieter, but even more revealing: the lack of disclosure of certain data. Parts of the Chinese lunar map are not publicly accessible, even among international research institutions. This suggests that there are classified points of interest, features or formations that will not be shared with the rest of the world. In light of this, the space race is no longer symbolic. It has become geopolitical. And like any race for territory, whoever gets there first will have more than an advantage. They will have control. China is building step by step, not a lunar mission, but a lunar presence. But all of this brings us to the most uncomfortable question of all. If the territory is being mapped with such precision and the resources are being identified one by one, what exactly do they intend to build there, and why? To continue unraveling the most disturbing mysteries of the universe, those that mix science, power, and the future, subscribe to the channel. Activate the bell and be part of those who are really paying attention to what is happening above our heads. Here, each theory is a portal to something bigger, and each video can change the way you see reality. You need to share this video with anyone who also doesn't accept easy answers. Bring to this conversation that friend who always questions, who searches for meaning between the lines of the cosmos. This is what you just watched is still unknown to many, and it's time for more people to open their eyes. Now imagine if what is happening on the moon is just the beginning. Click on the video that appears on your screen and prepare to discover that there is something much bigger brewing right in front of us.